All right, everybody, get ready because today we're taking a deep dive into some research that's got everyone talking. We're talking brain power, aging, and maybe even turning back the clock a bit. And I've got to say, some of this stuff sounds like it's straight out of science fiction.
It's definitely pushing the boundaries, that's for sure. And the study we're looking at today, well, it's causing quite a stir.
Yeah. Cognitive rejuvenation in old rats by hippocampal OSKM gene therapy. That's a mouthful, even for us.
It is, but trust me, it's worth unpacking. Let's start with those Yamanaka genes they keep mentioning.
Right from the get-go. That's what caught my eye. What exactly are they?
Well, they're named after Shinya Yamanaka, a scientist who basically found a way to reprogram cells to act younger. Won a Nobel Prize for it, actually.
Wow, a Nobel Prize, so this is big-time stuff.
Absolutely groundbreaking. It's like giving cells a little fountain of youth treatment.
And they're using this on the brain now. That seems like a huge leap.
It is, and the hippocampus is at the center of it all. You know, that part of the brain that controls our memory and learning.
Right, and as we get older, well, let's just say it doesn't always work as well as it used to.
Exactly. That's what makes this research so fascinating. They're targeting a region that naturally deteriorates with age.
So how do you even begin to test something like that? Give a rat a memory test.
It's actually pretty clever how they do it. Imagine this big disc with a bunch of holes around the edge, kind of like a giant game board.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Now, only one of those holes leads to a little escape box where the rat can relax. Think of it like a mini escape room for rats.
A rat escape room. That's
Yeah.
brilliant.
Right. And they time how quickly the rats learn the location of that escape hole over several trials. The faster they find it, the better their spatial memory.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do these Yamanaka genes fit into all of this?
They used these genes in a really interesting way. They took a group of older rats and divided them into two groups.
Okay, a control group, right.
You got it. One group received the Yamanaka gene therapy directly into the hippocampus, and the other group, a placebo.
Wait, hold on. Did they have to perform surgery for that? That sounds intense.
It sounds more dramatic than it actually is.
Yeah.
It's a very precise and well-established procedure. And the placebo is important because it ensures that any changes they see are due to the Yamanaka genes and not just the injection itself.
Gotcha. So they've got their rats, their maze, and the gene therapy. What happened next?
Well, here's where it gets exciting. The rats that got the Yamanaka gene therapy, they started getting significantly better at those maze trials. It was almost like they were turning back the clock on their memory skills.
Really? So are we talking about a real-life fountain of youth for the brain?
Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We need to delve a little deeper into why they saw these improvements. And for that, we need to talk about this thing called epigenetics.
Epigenetics. Okay, now you're just using big words to make me feel out of the loop.
Not at all. Think of it this way. Your DNA is like the hardware of a computer, and your epigenome, well, that's the software, telling your genes what to do.
Interesting. So what does that have to do with aging?
Everything. You see, those epigenetic instructions, they change as we age. And those changes, well, they play a big role in how our bodies and brains function as we get older.
So our software gets outdated.
In a way, yes. And scientists have developed these incredible tools called epigenetic clocks to measure those changes, essentially telling us the biological age of a cell, tissue, or even an organ.
So you're saying they can measure how old a rat's brain really is, regardless of its actual age?
Precisely. And that's where the results of this study get even more interesting. While it wasn't a complete reversal of aging in those rats that got the Yamanaka gene therapy, there was a very promising trend. It seemed like the treatment was pushing their epigenetic profile towards a more youthful state.
A trend. So not a complete system reboot, but maybe more like hitting pause or even rewind on the aging process in the brain.
You got it. It's like they found a way to tweak the brain's software, at least in these rats.
This is incredible. We've got to talk more about what this all means. But first, a quick break.
Okay, so we're back. And before the break, we were talking about tweaking the brain's software with Yamanaka genes and epigenetics.
Right. And it gets even cooler when you zoom in on the specifics.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more.
So you got to remember, younger brains, they have a very distinct look when it comes to these methylation patterns, especially in areas crucial for learning and memory. It's like their epigenetic signature.
Their signature, huh? And I'm guessing that signature changes as we, or in this case, the rats, age.
Exactly. Those methylation patterns shift, kind of like how a fingerprint develops more ridges and details over time.
Fascinating. So what happened to the fingerprints of these rats after the Yamanaka gene therapy? Well, what's incredible is that the therapy seemed to partially reverse some of those age-related shifts in the rats, particularly in those key memory and learning regions of the brain.
It's like giving those specific brain regions a little anti-aging makeover, making them look and act a bit younger.
That's a great way to put it. And here's the kicker. Those epigenetic makeovers seem to be directly linked to the behavioral improvements we talked about earlier.
You mean the rats getting better at navigating that make?
Exactly. The areas where the Yamanaka gene therapy had the biggest impact on those methylation patterns, well, those were the same areas responsible for spatial learning and memory.
No way. Talk about targeted therapy. It's like they figured out which parts of the brain's software needed an update and then delivered it with pinpoint accuracy.
Right. And that's what has scientists so excited. It's not just about masking the effects of aging. It's about potentially addressing the root causes, at least when it comes to the brain.
That's a game changer, for sure. But you did mention earlier this was a small study. So realistically, what are we looking at here? What kind of limitations should we be aware of?
That's a great question. And you're right to be cautious. We need more research, bigger studies, and we need to see how long these effects last.
So no brain-boosting clinics opening up anytime soon.
Not quite yet. But even so, the potential here is enormous. Just imagine if we could develop safe and effective therapies that slow down or even reverse the effects of aging on our brains. We could be looking at a future where things like age-related memory loss and cognitive decline are a thing of the past.
It's mind-blowing to think about. But with any new discovery like this, especially one that touches on something as fundamental as aging, I imagine there are some ethical considerations as well.
Absolutely. This technology raises some big questions about what it means to age, how we value cognitive enhancement, and who has access to these kinds of treatments.
Those are important conversations to have, for sure. But for now, let's stick with the science. This study focused on the hippocampus, but what about other parts of the brain? Could they benefit from this kind of approach as well?
That's a question a lot of researchers are asking right now. If we can target the hippocampus, what about other regions that are impacted by aging, like the prefrontal cortex, which plays a big role in things like decision-making and complex thought?
It's almost like we're talking about fine-tuning the entire brain. But what about the long game? This study looked at a pretty short time frame. Do we have any idea how long these changes might actually last?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? This study didn't look at the long-term effects. So we need more data to figure out if these changes are lasting or if we'd be looking at repeat treatments down the road.
So many questions, and yet that's what makes this field so incredibly exciting. It's like we're on the verge of something big here, something that could rewrite how we think about aging, especially when it comes to our brains.
It's definitely a paradigm shift. For so long, aging has been seen as this inevitable decline. But now we're starting to see it as something much more dynamic, something we might actually be able to influence.
And what could be more central to who we are than our brains, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's where our memories live, our personalities, everything that makes us, us.
Precisely. And if we can impact how our brains age, well, that opens up some incredible possibilities for longer, healthier, and more fulfilling lives.
It's almost a bit overwhelming to think about. But like we were discussing earlier, this kind of research also comes with a whole other layer of ethical questions.
Absolutely. We have to tread carefully and thoughtfully. It's not just about whether we can do something, but whether we should, and how we ensure these kinds of advancements benefit everyone.
Big questions for sure. So where do we go from here? What's next for this research, and what should we be paying attention to?
Well, for starters, we need to see this research replicated and expanded on. Larger studies, different brain regions, longer time frames.
Right, we need more pieces of the puzzle to really understand the full picture.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the whole world of translating these findings into safe and effective therapies for humans, which is a whole other ballgame.
It's a long road, but the possibilities are incredibly exciting. It feels like we're on the cusp of a whole new understanding of aging.
We are. And that's what makes this such a fascinating area of research. We're constantly learning, constantly pushing the boundaries, and who knows what incredible breakthroughs might be just around the corner.
Well, one thing's for sure, we'll be keeping a close eye on it all right here, and we'll be sure to keep you updated on all the latest developments. For now, thanks for diving into the science with us today. And to all of you listening, keep those questions coming and never stop exploring the frontiers of what's possible. Until next time.